Welcome back. Chip Nellinger and Jarod Creed rejoining us. All right, Chip, a lot of farmers, weighing the decision right now. What should I be doing about new crop based on this outside market influence that really has been a weight on these markets this week? What is your thought for this new crop?
Yeah, that's a tough question, Tyne. I think it depends on where you're at in the Corn Belt and what your production prospects are. If you're over here in the Eastern Corn Belt, particularly Illinois, where I'm at, and you're looking at average to way above average APH, then I think it's time to be protective. Look at some sales or puts. Leave the top side open via some minimum price contracts, but the outside financial market risks, in my mind, are as great as they've been maybe ever, certainly in the last 15, 20 years in our grain markets. Now, if you're in the Western Corn Belt and you've struggled for rain all year and you've got a below APH crop, that's a different decision. That comes in, what's my crop insurance program? Where's my guarantees come in? And that's a different conversation. So it depends on what your yield prospects are. The bottom line here is that we are not without downside risk, and maybe a lot of downside risk, especially if the financial market continues to go lower and the world does drip into this kind of recessionary slowdown that's pretty well hinted at this point.
Yeah, Jarod, you were in one of those areas this week that has really been hit hard by drought, and that's Kansas. And I know you saw firsthand crop potential there. There's folks that right now are, chopping corn, leaving those test strips for insurance purposes. As you get in some of those drought-stricken areas, what do some of those farmers need to keep in mind when it comes to their marketing plan?
A lot of what Chip just mentioned, actually, individuals that are struggling with the yield today, they darn well better understand what their insurance scenario is. And I would make a case that anybody that is in that big of a problem, their risk is actually likely shift from 22 over to the 2023 crop year. So I would say that it's more than just identifying what I need to do on this crop year, because your hands may be a little bit tied. The last piece left to determine on total revenue for those producers that are looking at a disaster of crop production is determining what the October averages are going to be for both beans and corn. Beans are currently below the spring insurance price, so there's a heightened chance of revenue insurance claims. And at this point in time, corn is a fair clip above its spring insurance price, so the only trigger that's there is a yield loss. So at that point, the farmer runs the risk of a lower price from today through the month of October, ultimately creating a lower indemnity payment from their multi-peril insurance. There are ways to go about and protect that, but it all starts with having that discussion with the insurance agent. And at the same time, I think that those producers need to be looking out at 2023 and not just get lost in the translation of just 2022.
Jarod, real quick, how bad is that crop in Kansas?
It's pretty darn bad. I left Kansas in 2012, and there's things happening in the state that haven't happened since 2012. Actually, a fair amount of soybeans being swathed for hay. Dryland corn harvest will be predominantly over within the next 7 to 10 days. Most of south of I-70 dryland corn harvest has been over, and I don't recall really seeing irrigated corn moving at this speed that it is. And then one last piece that's kind of fuel on the fire, you're starting to run into aflatoxin issues, and actually reported the EPA seizing corn from southeast Kansas last week due to enormous aflatoxin levels, that basically keeping that out of the feed market.
Well, Chip, when you look at that side of it, the supply side of it when it comes to grain, and then let's get into the cattle side of it, because we've seen the drought impact on this cattle supply. We've seen this feeder cattle market be fairly strong. We know we're going to have this tighter supply of calves come this fall. But are there any warning signs when it comes to the cattle market right now?
Well, we've seen a little setback in the cash cattle market here the last couple of weeks. We continue to see breeding stock liquidated because of the drought. First, it was the drought in the kind of that western plains and that northwest corridor. Now it's the drought in the southern plains. It's just been a brutal time frame for the cow-calf operator west of the Mississippi. And as a result, you've seen a lot of breeding stock go to market, and that's kept the numbers high and kind of kept the lid on things. I think going forward, that becomes much more bullish down the road. However, the big caveat is, we talked about it earlier ahead of the break, is the world economy going into some sort of a large slowdown in here? And that is going to be something that keeps a little bit of a lid on things. But I think fundamentally the cattle market's set up for really good things down the road here, but you have to kind of put an asterisk next to that because of a potential slowdown in the world economy and the domestic economy, more importantly.
Chip, we did have some rains in areas of Texas, some hopes that maybe that sprouts some of the wheat. They'll have some better grazing conditions for some of that cattle. But is it too late? Have we seen too much liquidation take place that this rain is just coming at a time where it's going to be hard for some of these cattle producers to recover?
Oh, certainly, any rain helps at this time. It's going to help. If we get some more in through the winter, that far, western and northern tier of the plains, I think has been healed up a little bit. I don't think it's too little, too late, but we need to get more. One rain isn't going to fix it. They're going to need additional rainfall in through the winter and in through next spring, and maybe we can be talking about something that's at least trending back towards something that is more normal, other than what we've been accustomed to the last 2 years, and that's just a brutal multi-year drought.
Yep, for sure. All right. Chip, Jarod, thank you so much for joining us this weekend. We need to take a quick break, and then we'll have a close call. Stories of survival from Iowa, a grain bin entrapment that just happened last week. We'll have that story next on U.S. Farm Report.